proudest day, and the proudest time in the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes, I got the bit between my teeth. You know, I really stood up and was counted and said, this is not getting away. I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, what are we doing? I said, we're going for gold, Barrett. That's all was said. I can still picture that run. That was just the best run ever.
Welcome to Krunching Gears, the Rally Podcast, the 2025 season, episode 5. And Connor, we're in for another special treat this evening.
We are indeed. Look, it's been quiet out there on the stages, but you know, we're still out there hunting for people to talk to and having a chat. And today, I think we've got another really good episode.
That's for sure. Like, Dessie Wilson has been on our radar for quite a while, and between one thing and another, we never managed to get him pinned down, but finally got him, and what a story.
Oh, listen, it was great conversation, great chat with Dessie. And like, you know, a career that spans 50 years. It's just incredible, like what he's packed into that. Yeah. You know, from all sides of the sport, from an organizer to competitor to, you know, even being involved in the development of pace notes.
Yeah, that's for sure, you know, and like that is an absolutely fascinating story. You know, 50 years and counting, you know, he's not finished yet, so but anyway, enough of us talking, let's hear from Dessie. And the first question I asked Dessie was, what got you started?
Well, thank you very much for having me, first of all, Kevin. I'm really privileged to be here. You know, I didn't think I was a star, you know, but, you know, what the hell, you know?
Well, it took a long time to get you here, but we got you now.
Well, I got involved in rally. I was always interested in cars and motorsport. And when I was 14 years of age, I joined the Vauxhall Craftsmen's Guild, you know. I mean, I was a guy in the 60s sitting at the kitchen table while everybody was watching the black and white TV. And they used to send me a bulletin every month, and I used to read this, and they had prizes and things. And I was all into this and into Airfix cars and, you know, little Ford Cortinas and Sprites and that Airfix made. And I would build them and put spotlights on them and all that sort of thing. So I was into it. And then my father took me to Bundoran one year to watch the Circle of Ireland coming through in the middle of the night, and I thought, Jesus, those guys are just real heroes. Look at them, but there's lights inside the cars and they've got maps, and this is just. I thought, well, I would like to do that, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's how I got started in it, and then my father was an engineer with the UTA, but he did some work with rally cars. Guys used to get the carburetors and tuned and that, you know, we were boy racers in them days, you know, we were only 17, 18 years of age, you know, and he would tune them, and then he would take me out and we'd watch the Earn Safari Rally. And, you know, it was mega because Sidney Meek was out in twin cam escorts, and Cal Curley and Mervyn Johnson, and, you know, they're real heroes in those days, you know. So they were, and you know, this was the business, and I thought, well, I want to do that, you know. So I did. So
and you're originally from Enniskillen direction, then, are you?
I'm originally from Anaman, from Enniskillen, yeah. So I am, you know. That's my territory, you know. Those were my guys, you know. So they were. So, you know, people like Bertie Fisher, and I done a lot of road rallies with Charlie Johnson down that part of the world, and he was a great mate of Bertie Fisher's, and Wesley Abraham and all them guys, you know, and they were all great road rally men, you know, in those days, you know. So
because we tend to forget how big road rallies were back in the 70s and even into the early 80s. Like, they bred a whole generation of drivers. Like, they were like really good cars going out and competing at night, like in open roads, really, essentially at that time.
Kevin, you have no idea. It was 120 mile of pure special stage, so it was. And I mean, my first rally was the Burma Orchard Rally in Lurgan, started in Lurgan, with North Armagh Motor Club. And I was a novice, obviously, you know. Frankie Burns and me, I started with him in HB Viva, a green HB Viva. My goodness, And it was a who's who that was on that entry list. The first 20 cars were experts. There was experts, semi-experts, and novices. First 20 cars were experts, and I'm talking about John McElroy, David Agnew, Sydney, Cal Curley, Mervyn Johnson, all that. It was unreal, And they were all lined up on the Guildford Road in Lurgan, and it was like a who's who of an international rally. So it was. And the semi-experts were, they were guys nipping at their heels, and we were number 61, and from 60 to 120 were the novices, So it was just a phenomenal entry, phenomenal cars, and it was hell for leather all night at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So it was unreal.
And Dessie, what would have been the tricks or what would have been the little underhand moves pulled?
Well, I as we developed, as I developed in road rally, and of course there was a few stunts that guys. I mean, there was really some top guys, and Peter Scott and Lenny Weir, Derek Smith, all them guys. I looked up. Even names are terrible with me, But Fred Gallagher, he was in the list as well. They're all top guys, navigators as we were all called, And I used to watch what them guys do, and I couldn't wait to get my maps down on paper, the route down, and I would be out and in mixing with those guys and seeing what way they were doing it and all. And some of them guys were very sharp. They were sharp, So they were. But I mean, there was all sorts of stunts going on, coming up to crossroads and turning the lights off and going flat through crossroads and all that sort of crack. And my God, it was, it was and the best about it was the guys that invented them things, the Peter Scotts of this day, they were the guys who were out trying to catch us when they weren't doing the rallies, Oh,
and we tend to forget too, this was at the height of the Troubles as well too, like 120 lunatics out running around mad around the countryside as well. Unreal,
it was absolutely unreal. And I mean, when I joined North Armagh Motor Club, we ran our rallies more or less in North and South Armagh, and a 70 or 80 mile route, or even a 120 mile route, which was the championship route, it had to be PR'd, Now, can you imagine going around South Armagh on a Sunday afternoon, knocking on doors, and you don't know what's going to come out of you? It could be a barrel of a gun or anything, It was horrendous, And of course, in South Armagh, for their fun, they would throw an all wee bit of slurry out on the road, just to make things a bit interesting, So it was, but I got involved with North Armagh, and Henny Lawson was the guy who did the routes for the road rallies, and he was a clerk of the course, and I was more or less his assistant, and learned a lot about the way that he ran the road rallies, and he ran a system where he would have a time control, and then he would have a big loop of about 10 miles right around the countryside and come back nearly to where the time control was within a mile or so of it. And he didn't like driving too far, so we would go to the time control and watch the cars taking off and then going around this loop. And we'd go to the next time control, and Henny would be sitting with the clock, and the back would be off the clock, and he would take it off the timekeeper, and he would listen, and we knew the sound of Kenny McKinstry's car, we knew the sound of Kenny Colbert's car, we knew the sound of all them guys. So we did. There was a guy up in Larne as well.
Fred Crawford, was it?
Yeah, Fred Crawford. Yeah, and you knew the sound of all them cars, so you did. And in the still of the night, we'd be saying, "Oh, here's Kenny coming. He's only about a mile down the road. Shit, he's going to be up about 2 minutes, So we screw the clock back, So we screw the clock back about 5 minutes, And then tighten it all up and give it to the timekeeper, and we'd stand back, and Kenny would arrive, and Kenny Colburn, sweat lashing off them, The guys were flat out, and maybe about 3 minutes down, and they'd be totally disgusted, So it was, totally illegal, all this, but it made some hell of a road rallying night, so it did. So, that's what it was all about in them days. I did road rallying virtually every Friday night, winter and summer, So I did. It was my passion, and you never learned enough. And as you progressed up the leaderboard, the bigger the pressure, So it was, and but it was brilliant, And it was, special stage rallying. This road rallying was the business, So
Because you're at the age then that you were just soaking up all this information. You were just like a sponge. You were watching everything that was going on and bringing it all in.
Watching everything, and I'd sit and talk to co-drivers or navigators and the top guys, and they'd give you all little tips, and people like Lenny Weir, he used to mark out his maps in tenths, So he did, so that he knew that he would turn right onto the road, and he would know that the next road on the right was about 5 tenths down the road, and he'd be calling that down to the driver, and the driver would be coming flat out to a road off to the right and just going down the gears and flicking the handbrake. And whereas we were looking for the road, you see, we were even on the right part of the countryside, So we were unbelievable, those guys, They really were very good.
They took it to a level that was almost like reading pace notes when they had it to that
Absolutely.
level.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the maps that we were using were inch to the mile, but they're now a lot better than that. You can nearly read them as pace notes now, but in them days it wasn't that great. But them boys made one hell of an effort of trying to do it, So they did. And it was amazing.
And then when you made the move into to stage rallying, but you did before you even got into the stage rallying, you become even never mind the co-driving. You spent a lot of time organising events then as well too.
Yeah, well, I mean, with North Armagh, we did organise a lot of events, road rallies, not before we got into stage rallying, and that's basically. I was more or less known as an organiser rather than a competitor. I did a lot for North Armagh in organising events, and the specialties the Kirkuson rally, which ran up until last year, I started that way back over 40 years ago, and it was little lanes that we started with and things like that, and it was the first rally. We had 18 special stages. We were only about a mile long, but there was about 4 or 5 of them up in Nuts Corner and all different parts of it, and one of the stages we had, Bridget McLaren was a stage commander on it, and she was looking after it, she was an ex-clerk of the course for the Circuit of Ireland. Great lady, and she rang me. She came over the phone and over the radio, and she says, "There's a guy here." One of the stages was in the flying club. They had a little flying club there where they flew toy airplanes. So they did, and it was big business, So it was, they flying these model planes, But we had permission to use their part of the airfield up in Nuts Corner, and the stage was laid up, and this guy arrived, and he says, "I want to fly my plane," So he did it. And Bridget says, "Well, there's a rally on here." He says, "I don't care, I'm going to fly my plane," So she got on the blower to me, and she said, "There's a guy here looking to fly a plane," So I says, "Put him on to me," He came on, and I says, I was not hyped up at all because of the rally. I says, "But no effing flying a planes here today," So he got thick, and he went in, and he started to set up the plane for flying in the middle of the stage, And I says to him, "The first car's due here in half an hour, you sit there if you want. I really don't mind, So he sort of fiddled about and farted about for about 50 minutes, and then he left, So he did. So Bridget came on the radio and says, "All clear now," So it is. But that's that's the way it was. So it was.
And as well as that, then you set up a rally school as well too, and it was probably way ahead of its time, because that introduced such a range of drivers, co-drivers into the sport as well.
Yeah, the rally school we set up, it was just something, because I was passionate about the road rally, and that we thought we'd introduce new people, and we started a rally school in January, and it wasn't to be any big deal. It was at Tandragee Junior High School, which is a little school in the North Armagh area, and the first year that we ran it, we had about 40, 50 people joined it, which was amazing. And then the second year it went up, and as it went on over a couple of years, it went up to about 60 people, so it did. And Tandragee Junior High School was just too small. So we then had to move it to Lurgan Technical College. So it did, where they had bigger rooms and lecture rooms and all of them. Kevin, we had 80 people there registered, So it was such a thing that impressed everybody, because we had days where we had Sydney Meek came along to it. We had Ronan Morgan. We had Brian Patterson. We had Bertie Fisher was a tutor. Drew Todd, he taught the navigation, and we covered everything, and it was they loved it, So we had a session with George Kennedy, the scrutineer, and he showed these guys how to present a car for scrutiny, which was invaluable to them, And Bertie done his bit, Drew Todd done his bit with navigation and all, and it was run over a 6-week period. And we had people like we had Chris Patterson who came, which I was really proud of because he went the whole way. So he did. Alan Harryman, the same. All them guys attended our rally school, and there are guys knocking about today. Declan Campbell, all them guys came to the rally schools. They did, and that's probably where I'm better known from them guys, because they all sat in front of me, And the BBC came along with a Channel 1 program, which was a program designed for teenagers, and it was hosted by Carl Keating, the late Carl Keating, and they appeared one night with their cameras and all, and we set up a rally car. It was Hard Buntings, actually, so it was, a little Nova, and Jesus, trying to get a camera crew into the Nova, and the night they came, it snowed. It was beginning of February, and it was horrendous, but went down the treat,
Yeah, I just think once again, this was getting rallying in front of the masses. This was BBC. This was prime time.
Yeah, well, they were trying to portray interests that teenagers could see and could do, and what was available, So it was, and motorsport is an option for all boy racers at that time, So but a lot of people came, and it was, it was very, very popular. At the end of it, we had a rally, and most of the people entered it, So they did, and we done a little bit on pace notes as well, but that was just to show what rally was all about,
And one name you mentioned there, and I think we should probably touch on it, Bertie Fisher. Yourself and Bertie shared this, the car a few times, and one of the things that you're very proud of, you won your first stage with Bertie and won your first rally. The both of you were in the car at the same time to get that accolade.
Yeah, well, Bertie was from Alman, same as myself, and as I said, Charlie Johnson and that, and I actually only done one rally with Bertie.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, it'd been Bertie was doing the Burma Orchard Rally, which was around the Northern Ireland Championship, So it was, and in KIA 2220, I think it was, So it was, and I was on the phone to Charlie back and forward all the time, and he says, Bertie's doing the Burma. He hadn't got a man, I says, I'll put my name down. You tell him I'm his man, So that's how it came about, So that was it. It was just, we just went and done the rally, and it was a funny day's rally, I have to say, Sydney Meek was a service crew. Sydney's wife and Bertie's wife, they were the mechanics. in my Fiat 127, you know, with a toolbox in the back, you know, and Jesus. And anyway, the exhaust fell off the car in Warren Point, so we pulled into a filling station that had one of them ramps, you know, and Sydney put the exhaust back on again, you know. So we did. We won the rally by about a second or two. It was very, very much from Ronnie McCartney, you know. So that was Bertie's first stage win. I think he won a couple of road rallies and navigation rallies. And that was my first win as well. And it was very appropriate, actually, because it was in May 1977, the same month that my father died. That's how I remembered, you know.
Yes.
So it was, but at least it was something I accomplished before he passed away, you know.
Yes.
It was. But yeah, I only done the one rally with him, so I did.
So you've a 100% record with him.
Well, a lot of the rallies that you see, a lot of the rallies where the results are obviously there to be seen on EWRC or whatever, you know, we done a hell of a amount of rallies that weren't.
Right, never been documented.
Never been documented, you know. I mean, you know, if you go to the Stephen Finlay days, you know, we done so many rallies, especially in the Orion, and you know, the Orion on tarmac was just a dog. You know, it didn't work. You know, so it didn't. We had a Hart engine in it, and it really needed a lot of research and development. But at the same time, you know, it was Sidney Meek's car, and he was the man. You know, and you know, the car was built superbly, but it just nothing worked really on the loose. It was fabulous, you know.
Yeah.
Suited Stephen Finlay down to a T, because he was a car control man. So it didn't matter how much power was under the back wheels, he could maneuver it, you know. So he could. But on tarmac, if you've seen photographs of that car on tarmac, it was like being on an icy road. The car was sideways everywhere. It was just not a tarmac car. So it wasn't. And I mean, we didn't do many rallies in Ireland, but we did Wexford one time, and I think we were leading it up to about the last stage and got a puncture. And we jumped out to change the puncture and found there was no jack on the back of it, you know. Sydney got a bit of a telling off that day. You know. But you know something, that's the way it was, you know.
Yeah, and even before the Ryan, I remember '86 Ulster Rally. This was, I think, was the one that really got the eyes on Stephen Finlay and the Sunbeam, an ex-Boyd Sunbeam, and this car in the middle of all these Group B supercars, you know, you had the Peugeot, the 205, all these Metros. This Sunbeam just seemed to appear out of nowhere, and it really just captured the public's imagination.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fabulous car, you know. So it was PIA 21, and Stephen's background would be in engineering. They had an engineering company, you know. So they loved fiddling with the car and doing it, and the car was always right, you know. But it was the first real car. I mean, if we go back to the beginning, how I got involved with Stephen Finlay was, we were in Sligo. With the Kittles doing the Sligo stages, and one Sunday afternoon. So somebody had arranged for Stephen Finlay to meet us on the way back, you know. So we went back, and Stephen Finlay had this old Group 1, a Schooner or something, you know. So he had one of the old square ones, you know. And he brought it down to the Blockyard, you know. Now, the Blockyard in Finlay's was vast, you know, so it was, and there was hundreds, thousands of blocks and all sorts of things, concrete posts and everything, you know, and we went down. We all arrived in Kittle's high ace van. That was the norm at the time, a high ace van and a trailer, you know. In the 70s and 80s, everybody went in a high ace van, you know, so they did. That was what it was all about, you know. So we arrived at Finlay's, and Stephen wheels out this car, and all the boys got in him. Jim Kittle, Norman Kittle, they all got in. Finlay round the Blockyard. Oh, he was like an Ari Faulkner. And the guy hadn't even got a license. I think he was only about 15 or 16, you know. It was just amazing. I mean, I was standing with my mouth open, you know. Here's me. My God, that if we have a crash here, we're all dead, you know. But you know something? It was no bother to him. So it wasn't. His control, his car control skill was just amazing, you know. So Jim Kittle says to me, "Get him in up there, you know." Here's me. I'm not getting him at that boy. That's a lunatic. So he says, "Get him in him." He says, "It's amazing." I says, "It looks amazing, but I'm not getting in." So I had a little restaurant in Moira. We called them cafes in them days, you know. And in them days, there was a lot of reps on the road. That was how people done their business, you know. And Finley's had a rep. And Finley's rep used to come in to me every Wednesday for his lunch, you know. So he did, because he was in that area, you know. And he would keep me up to date what's happening, Stephen Finlay, you know. And so he did. So this Sunbeam arrived, and him and a mate of his done a lanes rally. It was Stephen's very first rally. I don't think they done it well. I think they got lost, actually, you know. So your man came to me and he says, "We need you. We badly need you, you know." So I said, "Right, okay." So we struck up a relationship with Stephen, and he went to a rally in Donegal. I think it was a single stage rally, one of them ones where he'd done it 3 times or something, you know. Yeah. And it was lashing rain. It was a terrible day. And the only thing Finlay was interested in was he had this big, massive camera, like what news people use, you know. And he just bolted into the roll cage, you know, so that he could get all the information, you know. So, and this roll cage took up the whole day's crack. So it did, you know, the rest of it was the driving. But the driving, I mean, in those wet roads, he was just phenomenal, you know. He really was phenomenal. Now, we didn't stay to see the results because I had to get back to a restaurant, so it was on a Saturday, so it was busiest day of the week, you know. And but I mean, he could show them guys how to go, you know. And
this was him probably only, what, 17, 18 years of age at that stage, was he?
He was just 17, so he was, you know, just 17. And we didn't really do any rallies in Ireland. I wasn't keen on doing any rallies in Ireland because he was a gravel man, and there was some great championships in England. There was the BDRDA, and there was a British National Championship in them days, which was the Sunseeker and Granite City, and those were all national events, you know. So they were great for potential for him over there, and so we embarked on a crusade of going over to the BTRDA, and I remember the first round we went to was in South Wales. It was just on the Welsh border there, you know. It was the Whiting Rally, you know. So it was. And it's a fabulous rally, but it was so cold. It was in February. The stages were pure ice. I mean, pure ice. And Finlay was seated 49, I think. And it was reverse seating. The BTRDA was reverse seating. So it was, so all the top guys were behind us, you know, and we were sort of halfway through the field, you know, and Finlay just blew them all away, you know. I mean, big long straights in the Whiting, down the Forest of Dean, you know, and icy roads, and he never broke sweat, you know. It was no problem. So it was, his car control was phenomenal, you know, and we ended up something like about 9th overall, you know. 17, 18-year-old, you know. It's crazy, like, you know. So it was, and, you know, it just went on from there. So we had great success.
You say it was just such a natural, like it was not something nobody ever showed him. It was just a natural God-given gift he had.
It was natural. The whole thing was a great setup. It was natural in that he was a cool customer, you know. He was a young lad. The Iran was different, you know. So it was, and the Welsh really took to him, you know. They just loved to see him out on the stages, so they did, and he just loved it too, you know. The stages were fabulous, you know. Some of the stages in Wales, Clocainog and all them, brilliant stages, you know. So they are, and he ended up winning the Vauxhall Rally of Wales, and the year before that, in '93, he was third in the Sierra. So he was, you know. So, and we won the Sunseeker Rally, and I think we done very well in the KL Graphics as well. Done really well in Wales. So we did. It was natural home for us. So it was.
Yeah, because as you say, like he was more at home on gravel than he ever was in tar,
Oh
and
yeah.
that was his natural habitat. And like, everybody knows the story. Like he wasn't able to fully commit to rally, and his father died whenever he was very young age. Like going by what you're saying, this guy could have been at the top of the world.
Well, you're talking about his father, and associated with Stephen Finlay was a lot of things that were going on. I mean, his father hated rallying. And when we were down the Blockyard, he scattered us. The father came down, and that was the show over. Locked the gates, everybody out, everybody out. Stephen Finlay up to the back, picked the car back up to the garage. It wasn't going to happen. John Finlay was dead against it. And I remember going to a rally in Cavan on a Sunday morning, a wee loose rally in the forest around Cavan. And I went down to his house very early in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning or something, to head to Cavan, And as we were leaving, John Finlay arrived, and he begged Stephen not to go, And that was a very telling moment, So it was, and it's very embarrassing, I don't know what to say, because I was the guy who was pushing the whole thing, I was always encouraging him and doing this, and for the years that he was in it, it was all encouragement, and here's John Finlay, and it was really hard to take, And actually that day we rolled the Sunbeam, through no fault of his own. We came downhill into a square right, and because there was a lot of trees about, an awful lot of trees, So Stephen braked, and there was no brakes, So everything happened in a split second, So he started to do a Roger Clark and started to throw the car this way and that way, then fired it into the corner, pulled the handbrake, and we nearly got away with it. And then he hit a rut, and the car just went over, But he had it under control, so rolled the car over, couldn't get back on its wheels, and very little damage to it. Got out of the stage, and the air-equipped pipe had burst open. I never seen that before. I've never seen it since. Just burst open. It was just a fault, obviously, with the pipe. But it was a hairy moment. John Finlay wouldn't have liked that.
Oh.
Wouldn't have liked that.
And so,
Yeah.
because normally, you see the encouragement from the family if somebody has a bit of talent and that. So for the opposite to be, must have been very difficult for Stephen, as well, to even focus on the rallies then.
Well, he was a young lad, and the young lads in them days, they had their own amusement, So they had Trevor, his brother, a couple other lads, their friends and all, they were just teenagers, So they were. So John Finlay, yes, he didn't like it. His mother, she was quite encouraging, So she was. I don't think they realised what a natural talent he was, I don't think anybody did. I mean, I from a very early stage recognised that, there was only one person that I seen was like Stephen Finlay, and that was Billy Coleman, Billy Coleman I seen as a natural, just everything he stepped into, he was so good, And I just seen Stephen in that mould, So I did, and I couldn't see anybody that was like that, The family didn't really see that, and then of course things happened so quickly. John Finlay then died in a car accident, which was tragic, and Stephen Finlay went from being a teenager to an adult because there was this massive business. There was the concrete business, which was given to Stephen. There was the engineering business. There was a couple of engineering businesses, and they were given to Trevor and sister, So everybody had to grow up, and there was a lot that had to be sorted out, an awful lot of problems that had to be sorted out. And there was a couple of years when it was a bit lean, So Stephen went from being a boy to a man in the space of maybe a year,
Yeah.
So we did. And the thinking was just completely different,
Yeah.
So it was.
His whole priorities just changed in the blink of an eye, basically.
It was completely different, and suddenly there was a lot of responsibility and there was a lot of things going on. And then what people don't know is that Stephen, after that, then just before he bought the Iran, I think it was around 88 or 87 or something. My memory, this goes back an awful long time. You're asking me to remember things 50 years ago, 40 years ago, and God, I can hardly remember my next door neighbour's name, so I can't. So it's all a bit difficult, But Stephen had a very bad car accident,
Yeah.
So he had, and his pelvis was badly damaged, and Mrs. Finlay, his mother, Lily, she worked extremely hard to make sure that Stephen wasn't left with a limp,
Right.
because that could have been the consequences of the accident,
Okay.
So he spent a lot of time in hospital, and obviously being in hospital, spent a lot of time thinking, So he did.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was after that the Orion appeared, Sydney been speaking. He had a lot of visitors in the hospital, the locals. And anyway, Sydney and him struck up a deal for the Orion, which I was very happy about because, it sounded great. The whole setup sounded great,
Mm-hmm.
Different car, different setup. Sydney makes talent, and what could go wrong, But as it happened, it was difficult, very difficult. The car was great on the loose, but difficult on tarmac,
Mm-hmm.
So that probably nearly put Stephen's smoke out, his interest waned, and it was trying to get him encouraged back into it, So that was difficult,
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, he had a friend called Bertie Fisher who arrived one morning and spent the whole day negotiating to buy the 4x4 Sierra. Bertie Fisher wasn't leaving until there was a deal done, and it was as simple as that.
Yes.
So it wasn't. And from 9 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the day, there was a lot of horse trading done. But Stephen Finlay ended up owning a 4x4 Sierra. So he did, And it was a fabulous look. It was.
Is he as painfully shy in real life as you always come across in the interviews?
Oh, at the beginning it was horrendous,
Yeah.
So it was. You're going back to the Ulster Rally in '86 when suddenly he appeared in the top 10, and Plum put all the cameras on him, Well, Stephen had a corner, He says, "I'm out of here." We were in Oma Showgrounds, and the cameras were starting to appear, And Stephen says, "Right, that's it. We're going home. Home." Here's me. We're not going home. He says, "We're going home. We're going home." Here's me. We're not going home. I says, "If you don't want to speak to the cameras, that's fine. I'll do the talking, but you're not going home. You're not." So he says, "Oh, it's all right. You do the talking." So I done the interview. So I did, and that was that. And after that, actually, we did embark on a media course.
Right.
So we did for Stephen.
Uh-huh.
We had a couple of television personalities who ran media companies, and we got him in front of the camera in one of them. And so we did. He lightened a wee bit, But as he matured, it got better, But it was horrendous at the beginning.
Because I've often heard in person he's one of the most personable people you meet, but put a camera in front of him, he just hates it. That's not his thing.
No, I mean he's great crack. We had some crack. We definitely had. I mean the rallies was a blast.
Yeah.
So it was, but shove a camera in front of him and was sheer panic. It's a bit like me panicking tonight. You guys, it's easy for you guys, but
Old hands off it now at this stage.
maybe a set of pace notes and I'm grand, Like a camera in front of me and blah, 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 the whole
But
thing.
you mentioned then the 4x4 Sierra. Even before that, there was a 3-door Sierra too. That it was only used I think maybe only 2 or 3 times, and that was moved on to Frank Maher. never quite seemed to gel with it the same as he did by the 4x4 car.
Well, he rang me one night. It must have been near 12 o'clock, and he says to me, "Hi, boy, what a car." I says, "What did you buy?" He says, "I bought Russell Brooks's car. I'm heading out of London here with it. I says, "Jesus, right, okay." So yeah, this year it was a fabulous car, a great car. We went to Sligo and won it just as a sort of a warm up, and we used it we used it in the Ulster Rally, I think, one year.
Yeah.
So we did, and Colin McRae was there. Colin McRae was always the benchmark, So he was, We went to the Galloway Hills one time, and Colin McRae was in the same hotel as us, and we appeared in the Iran, and he was down as it was a Peugeot 205 rear-wheel drive one, belonged to Donald Millen, I think,
Yeah.
So it was. We woke up the next morning. There was an RS 1800 in the driveway. So it was. So I reckon Colin took us seriously, So anyway, Stephen beat him all day long in the Scottish Forest, because Jimmy came every stage and got our times, and there wasn't a stage where Colin beat us, and on the last stage Colin went home. Right. So he did, So I thought that was a great winning the Galloway Hills. So it was, but the Sierra, the 3-door Sierra was a great car. Really was a great car. And there's another story which I don't really know, but Philip Boynan, who's a very good friend of mine, knows a great story of the day they arrived up to buy the 3-door Sierra. So again, it was a whole day's dealing. Frank arrived with his bank manager, Philip Moynihan, a whole lot, and there was a whole lot of horse trading done to get the car, but it done very well for Frank, and it's now become an iconic car.
Yeah.
So it has with Craig Breen, and but it was Stephen brought that car to Ireland, so it was.
And isn't it funny? The colour scheme didn't even really change an awful lot as well, too. Whenever you just had a red stripe across the front, and Frank changed that then to a Duckham's colour scheme, then really didn't, and that was really the only major change to it.
Well, Stephen arrived with this colour scheme, which was a
kind of a Marlborough colour scheme, wasn't it?
It was a fluorescent orange and white. And I says, "Where the hell did you get that from?" He says, "It's good, isn't it? Looks good, doesn't it?" So I says, "Well, if we go with the heads, we'll be seen anyway, So it will, But yeah, it was a great car. So it was a great car.
Yeah.
But
and then the 4x4 car, then that was really the car that propelled you, to, like, anybody who didn't know who Stephen Finlay was suddenly was very aware of him then.
Yeah, the 4x4 I thought it was a great car, well balanced car. And Bertie didn't have that much luck with it, but Stephen had good luck with it, Yeah. And then the 4x4 then led on to the Cosworth, so it did. But the 4x4 we done, I think we won the Sunseeker in it, or the Mazda Winter Rally, as they called it then. First round of the national championship, and we won a couple of national events, and then we went to do the circuit, or we went to do the Ulster, and Malcolm came over, and he had the Escort, so it was the Michelin Pilot Escort, the first year of it, and Stephen's mechanic was one of Malcolm's men,
Andy Brown at that stage.
Andy Brown, yeah. So Andy Brown had access to all the gear in the back of Malcolm's truck, So Stephen Finlay spotted that Malcolm had a spare set of front struts, these whooper-duper struts that was in this fancy Escort, So Stephen says, "Bolt them onto my Sierra, see how it go, So Andy Brown bolted them on, and I think we were leading the Ulster after the first couple of stages, and then we came to the Craigavon Lakes. And Malcolm had a habit, he always wanted a service before the stage and after the stage. So I bolted a new set of tyres in Craigavon and went into the Craigavon stage, and it was 100 yards, 200 yards down to the first square right, and we just planted the Sierra in the field of the square right because the tyres were bloody cold. And there was there was barbed wire around it and everything. Oh, and what a mess, you know. So it took us about 4 minutes to get out of it. So that was the end of the result. But we carried on, and you know, it was a great car, really was. I loved it. So it did.
And again, an ex-Russell Brooks car as well too, you know. So there was that nice tie-in as well.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. I mean, in those days, a works car was something special.
Yeah.
You know, it really was special. You know, so it was.
And
I
that,
remember,
as you say, that was then what more or less progressed us into being part of the Michelin pilot team. Then the following year, teammates to Malcolm Wilson.
yeah. Well, towards the end of the year, Malcolm gave him the opportunity to drive a Cosworth, one of the Michelin Cosworths, on, I think it was the Pirelli Rally, the last round of the BRC, you know, and was in Kielder, you know, and Kielder's a hard place, you know.
Yeah.
But you know something, we got on the best in it, and we were mixing it with the best of them, you know. So I'm not sure we were at the time we were leading or second, but we were in the mix anyway, you know. And Stephen was enjoying the day, you know, and we were throwing the old Cosy around everywhere, you know, and Kielder, but you don't mess with Kielder, you know. And he let it slip out in one spot, and the car just bounced into a drain, you know. That was sitting at the side of the road, and you thought, right, drive it out, you know. Wouldn't move, so it wouldn't, and we were stranded there all day. So we were.
Because you often used to watch, you know, the RAC reports, you know, back in the 80s and the 90s, and it was always killer Kielder, you know, the ditches take cars in and don't give them back kind of thing, you know, and like you might call him William Woolard and Tony Mason, you know, but this place, and you know, you had this sort of mystical vision of it.
No, Kielder doesn't forgive you.
Yeah.
Definitely, you know, and Pondershaw, all them stages, big long stages, difficult place to be. And if you relax for a second, you're off, you know. So you're, and that's what happened. The car just drifted left slightly and just caught a rut and pulled it in, you know. And then we were stuck, you know. I was raging, you know. He was raging too, you know.
Yes.
But then that started the Michelin pilot deal. So it did come. We had a meeting with Michelin and Malcolm at the beginning of the year, and Michelin were very nice people, and they offered a good deal, you know. And there was tires involved, and there was some money involved, and we had to go and find then the rest of the budget, you know. So we did. So I, in my wisdom, decided that Sean Quinn was the man who was going to cough the money up, you know. So it was. So Sean Quinn was on a high in them days, you know. He had just a new concrete plant opened up and everything, you know. And he knew Stephen, and Stephen knew him, you know. So there was a bit of an icebreaker there, you know. So we marched off down to Sean Quinn's one day with a proposal for him, you know. And I thought it was a brilliant proposal. I was so impressed with it, you know. So it was, you know, how could you refuse? I mean, here's a Ford Works team, you know. There's a Ford badge on the side of it. There's Michelin Pilot, the biggest tire manufacturer in Europe, you know. What could go wrong, you know? Sean Quinn was not interested, you know. He says, my money's in GAA. I says, but you're missing the bigger picture, you know. So, and you know, at the end of the conversation, Sean Quinn wanted to sell Stephen Finlay concrete, and Stephen Finlay had a concrete works. And Sean Quinn says, I can sell you concrete cheaper than you actually can make it. See, here's me. Jesus, it's time we were out here. You know?
How did this go like this?
How did this all turn around, you know? So but anyway, we got a deal sorted out with P&O and a couple of other people, and got the thing off the ground, you know. So we did.
And like for you to be standing in the first round of the BRC with your, you know, Michelin Pilot suit on, stepping into like the ultimate car at the time, like was that like a very special feeling, or was it just I'm here to do my day's work?
It was all pressure, Kevin. You know,
Right.
when you get to those heights, it's all pressure.
Okay.
And it was just pressure, 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 you know. So it was the razzmatazz of it, the cameras and the TV and the whole lot, and M Sport, and you know, our driver's briefing had about 60 people at it, you know. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, you know, what's all this about? I mean, Finlay and me just went to rallies and rallied, you know. So we did, and you know, had a beer after, you know, but this was all heavy schedule and all, you know, and
Right.
so we did. And then the first stage of the BRC, first stage into it, we passed Malcolm, you know. He was stranded, you know. We're thinking, wow, you know. So, and then suddenly we were leading the rally, you know. And to be quite honest, I wouldn't say it was easy. It wasn't easy, but we could control the pace quite well, you know. So we was, and Stephen had vast knowledge of Wales by then. So he had, you know, we had been there the year before, came third overall, and he'd been to lots of rallies in the BTRDA and in the National Championship in Wales. So we had a real good working knowledge of Wales, you know. So we had, and yeah, it was a great day. So it was winning a round of the BRC, which it is now, of course, you know.
Yes.
Was, yeah, it was great feeling, you know. So it was. But it was hard to take it in because the pressure was always there. It was always pressure, you know.
Yes.
Circuit of Ireland was the next weekend.
Yeah.
We didn't get back from Wales until Monday sometime, you know. And circuit was starting on the Friday, and it was a 5-day event, you know, and you know, so there was a lot of pressure, you know. So there was a lot of pressure.
And then the Circuit Ireland, like what a year that was. Like that's one of those years that's going to go down that people would talk about in another 50 years' time, you know. The snow, you know, the drama. It was the snow that fell on the second night, wasn't it? It was like
No, it was the very first morning.
yes, right.
Yeah, Friday was hell for leather. It was just manic, you know. The circuit on the Friday was in Kenny McKinstry's territory. It was in County Down, County Armagh. So it was, you know. So we knew it wasn't going to be easy. Kenny was leading the championship, you know, after Galway, you know. And Galway was a bit of a disaster because we went to Galway and there was a lot of pressure in Galway because the Michelin deal had included a PR company who Malcolm didn't like.
Right.
They were a PR company that Michelin employed, but they were a Formula One company and they knew nothing about rallying, you know. And they got no joy out of Malcolm. He was just saying, ring Dessie Wilson, you know. So these people were coming and asking the stupidest questions, you know, about, you know, where's the arena and all. And I said, what are you talking about? The spectators stand on mountains, so they do. Or
That you were there.
you know, so they do, and they couldn't see what, and so, you know, where's the arena that you start from and all this, and I said, there's no arena, you know, so people just turn up and stand on the side of the road, you know, and it was horrendous, you know, and there was all this pressure, and the rally itself went quite well, you know, so it did. Very wet, Galway was very wet, and Stephen coped with that okay, you know, his pace was phenomenal, you know, really, you know, for somebody who wasn't au fait with the tarmac championship, you know, Galway, he coped with it very well, you know, and come to the last stage, and we were lying, I think, third overall, and Kenny was leading it, and we started the stage in daylight, we ended it in dark. It was that time of the day, you know, so it was, and we weren't long into the stage, and we came across Kenny, and he had a puncture, and he wasn't going to let us by, you know. So he had his lead to hold on to, and he'd to protect everything, you know, which was fair play. And Stephen says to me, "What are we going to do?" You know, and I unwisely, I have to say, I said, "Stephen, look, we're the new boys on the block here, you know. Let's not push it, you know. So sit tight, and if you get an opportunity to pass him, you know." That was the worst decision I ever made, you know.
Right.
If I had my time again, Kenny was off the road.
Yeah.
Because the damage he'd done to the Causey was unreal. All the lights were damaged. the whole front was damaged. The debris coming off the Legacy was unreal, you know. So
Yes, we're just getting all that fired into the front of the Cosworth.
all that was just, and I mean, that was for over half a stage, you know. Now, the guys did apologise, and that was fine, you know, but, you know, a result in Galway and a result on the circuit would have let Stephen win the championship. That didn't happen. And, you know, going back even further than that, at the beginning of the year, Malcolm wanted us to do the British Championship and the Tarmac Championship. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. I said to Stephen, what'll I tell you? You know, you can't do that. You're just not experienced enough to do that. That is 12 odd rallies, all international rallies. It's horrendous, you know. I says, I'll tell you now, if you do the Tarmac Championship, you win it. If you do the both rallies, you'll win nothing, or both championships, you'll win nothing. And he won nothing. So he did. He says, you tell Malcolm, you know. I says, it's not my job to tell Malcolm. He says, oh, but you're good at telling him, you tell him, you know. So I got on to Malcolm and we had a conversation, you know. So I was never Malcolm's favourite person, unfortunately, you know. But that's the way it is. I didn't care. I had to say him a bit, and that was it, you know. And I told him it wouldn't work out. Malcolm says, not be a problem, you know. So it wouldn't. But it ended up a problem, you know. Yeah. So it did. So after Galway, came to the circuit, then there was a point to prove, you know. And as far as Stephen was concerned, he never said it, but I know rightly, as far as he was concerned, Kenny was not going to get the better of him on the circuit. Even on his, and the opportunity came on his hometown, you know, or his home country, you know. So Kenny gave it all, and Stephen gave it all, and there wasn't an inch given all day, and it was hell for leather. So it was, and I think after stage 5 or 6 or something, Kenny put it in a bridge, you know. And that was it over. And we looked around to see who was the next man beside us, and the next guy behind us was about 4 minutes or something, 3 minutes. So, holy goodness, was the pace that I didn't realise the pace was that hot, you know. Yeah. So it was. But the circuit was difficult. The next morning then, we started out very early. It was dark. The first stage was dark. And again, we had the tyre change at the beginning of the stage. And it was dry and it was cold and no big deal. And we drove up to the start of the stage, and running number 1 on the road, it's always difficult. And the stage hadn't gone live, and they were trying to get it live, and it was the first stage of the day, and there was a bit of waiting about. And they then decided, right, okay, 3 minutes we're going to go. So we got ready up to the start line, and the snowflakes came. Jesus. And they came, and they came, and they came. And when we left the start line, the road was white. It was virgin white, not a car mark on it or nothing. It was, and we were on like possibly intermediate or something, you know. And there was no grip anywhere. And we were up hedges and ditches, couldn't get turned into junctions. It was, I honestly don't know how Stephen Finlay got through it. I'd have been in the first stage. So it was unreal. I don't know where he got his car control. Now, we were about 42nd, so we were in stage times, because the guys further down the field obviously seen what happened and were able to react to it, you know. So if there's any old forest tires in the van at all, get them out and get them in, you know. And some guys put up some good times, but we were about 42nd or 50th maybe, you know. It didn't affect the overall rally as far as stage times goes, but it was horrendous. And then the clerk of the course, he went over a hedge in Leitrim, so we did. And then our chase car, which was Robin Lyons, great guy, great pilot, you know, he went off the road in Ladies Bray in Sligo, and our rally was starting to fall apart, you know. So it was. Oh my God, you know. It was horrendous, you know, but it was an extremely difficult rally. And it was difficult in many angles because leading up to the rally, Malcolm insisted on having a chase car, as I said, the beginning and the end of every stage. That's not possible under the regulations, so it's not. And Austin Fraser was the competitor liaison officer, and I spent about 3 weeks liaising with Austin every night, trying to find a compromise with the USC, and trying to find a way that, because as far as Malcolm was concerned, this was a works team, so they should be allowed this privilege. There's no privileges, you don't get that. So you don't. So it wasn't going to happen, So we devised a system. So we did that. I drew up a letter of permission, and the letters there was about 100 letters done up with these permissions to be signed, and the chase cars had them, and Malcolm had them. And what they'd done was, if they had a bit of private land, like somebody's driveway, they would go and knock on the door and say, "Could we change our tires in your driveway?" "Yeah, okay. Well, would you sign that form to say so?" So there's all these forms, and it was horrendous. But in all fairness to Austin Fraser, he was a brilliant guy, an amazing guy. And he came up with these, and it worked, And in other areas where we couldn't, as long as we serviced 100 metres off the route and came back on the same route, then we weren't doing anything illegal. And I mean, the USC did patrol it very, very carefully. We weren't allowed to breathe, So we weren't, and we had a funny situation in Drogheda where there was a long road miles from the other side of Dublin way up to Drogheda. In fact, there was a way down the other side of Wicklow way, and there was about an hour and a half road time, So we arrived up at this filling station about a mile from the start of the stage, and Malcolm and his chase car had pulled in and got their signature and all. Asked the guy in the filling station, "Can we change tires here?" And yeah, would you sign the form, this famous form we had, So we had this form, and anyway, about half an hour later, the rally was sitting on the forecourt, so it was, and Kieran O'Neill came up to me and he says, "Do you know what you're doing is illegal?" I says, "How do you work that out?" He says, "You're illegally servicing here." I says, "No, I'm not illegally servicing. The whole fucking rally's illegally servicing." Yeah, I'm included. I have a letter here to say I have permission to service here. It was funny. That was the only highlight of the rally, so it was.
But leading the rally by 3 or 4 minutes for practically 4 days, that must even bring, you'd really be happier to get involved in a close fight, because it must be hard to keep the focus for the 4 days after that.
Oh, it was horrendous. It was really difficult. Couldn't find a pace to work with, and we couldn't find a pace that was safe. And, we kept making mistakes, and it was terrible, So it was I was glad to see the end of the rally. So it was, But for me, it was an ambition of mine,
Yes.
And I was chuffed to bits, And as a very famous co-driver, well, he's really a navigator from Oma, said to me one time, and they've plenty to say in Oma, so they have, he says to me, "Dessie Wilson, I'm a better navigator than you, because I won the Northern Ireland Championship, but I envy you because you won the Circuit of Ireland."
You think that?
We'll talk about a pinch of salt.
Yeah. But a few years ago, Craig Breen, won the Circuit of Ireland. This was his boyhood dream. His name now is on the trophy along with Frank Maher and Stephen Finlay, and the fact that he was reading that off, that your name's there, and he was reading that, it must give you even still chills to think your name's in that illustrious role.
Well, I mean, it's a very proud moment to know that you go down in the history books, and whatever happens from here on in. People introduce me as the guy that won the Circuit of Ireland, and people say to you, "What class did you win?" Excuse me, sorry, So, even to this day, and it's 30 years ago, So it is. But yeah, I mean, certainly in the 70s and 80s, the Circuit of Ireland was the rally. It was the only rally in town, so it
Yeah.
was, you know. I mean,
There was nightly coverage on UTV and RTE. Like it was on the news. It was in the papers. It was everywhere.
It was a high name.
Everything was up a different level, you know. So it was, you know.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It was a household name. Like, you know, if you ask anybody who knew nothing about rallying in Ireland, name a rally. It was always a circuit.
Yeah, I mean, if you mention to a rally driver the Circuit of Ireland back in them days, you'd always get a few pound sponsorship to the Circuit of Ireland, but you would never get it to do any other rally because in them days, every Tom, Dick, and Harry recognised the Circuit. And if you talk to the man on the street, they'll say, "Yes, I used to go out and watch it up in such and such a place."
Yeah.
And, you know, everybody, through the whole of Ireland, people recognised it and got involved in it. You know, so it did.
Yeah, it's like you were saying earlier. You and your father went down to watch it in Bundoran, you know, and like it was kind of part of people's childhood. That was something that they wanted done at Easter.
It was amazing, you know. So it was. It was. Even in the 60s and 70s, it was the rally, really, you know, and that carried on for a number of years. And the 5-day format was tough, really, really tough, you know. So it was. I remember an early Circuit of Ireland, I used to pop little tablets in me, you know, to keep me awake, you know. What do you call them? Pro Plus or something?
Pure caffeine.
This was your fix, you know. So it was. In them days, I didn't know anything different, you know. So that was your fix, you know.
And also during those early 90s too, yourself and MJ, the world champion, MJ, we should say.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Set up you were being quite entrepreneurial. You set up a pace note service at that stage.
Yeah, well, it was after sitting with Simon Chapman in the British Championship, and that came about by Simon Chapman had signed up to the British Championship, and sort of halfway through the championship, wasn't going the way he wanted it to go, you know. So he didn't. So I got a call from the PR man out of Vauxhall, and he said, "You Irish co-drivers, you're the boys on the notes, you know." He says, "Would you sit with this guy, you know?" Here's me, yeah, no problem, you know. So we went over to the Isle of Man, and he was in the 1300 class, the Novas, you know. But they're the equivalent of the JRC or the JBRC at the time, you know. I mean, Alistair McRae and all them guys was in it, you know. Colin McRae was in a couple of years before that, you know. So it was and Vauxhall were given £3,000 for a class win on the BRC, you know. So it was a big incentive in the early 90s or late 80s, you know. So it was for to do that, you know. But Simon Chapman had notes which were numbers. And we didn't have numbers in Ireland up to that time, you know. So we didn't. And it was a 1 to 9 system, which was fairly intense, you know. It was simple enough in that 1 degree, 1 to 10 degrees, you know, represented 1 right up to 9. So it was and it was what the Europeans used, and Simon Chapman used it, and you know, but it was very hard to note make with it. You know, I could see Simon struggling. You know, he wasn't that au fait with it, but worked. You know, and I seen myself a simpler way of doing it. You know, like in Ireland we had the mediums, Ks, fasts, blah blah blah, which represented about 6 notes. You know, so and I thought if we could make that into numbers, it might relate better to some guys, you know. You know, a number 1 being flat and 6 being square, or the other way around, whatever way you do it. And Colin McRae famously brought up the gearing system. So 1 was first gear, 2 was second gear, 3. You know, well, I wasn't convinced that worked, but anyway, it's not for me to say. Every man himself, you know. So Mickey Joe and me decided we would start a number system. So we opened up a company called Europace doing numbers, you know. So we did, and Brian Patterson was doing the the descriptive notes at the time, you know, and of course they were extremely popular, you know, so they were. And so we decided we'd start it up. Now it opened a few can of worms, you know, so it did, but and it was difficult. Some of the motor clubs weren't very cooperative, you know, and weren't forthcoming. Mickey Joe made the notes for down the south, like Cork, Kerry, up to maybe Dublin, and I done the ones sort of in the west and the Midlands, you know. So it did, and the motor clubs weren't very forthcoming at happiness, you know, and Motorsport Ireland, who were the RISE at the time, weren't very forthcoming either, you know. So life was quite difficult, but, you know, we persevered with it, and, you know, at the end of the day, business was business, you know, and Brian Patterson and us were at loggerheads at times, but, you know, I mean, Michael Patterson and Chris Patterson are good friends of mine. You know, I have a pint every week with Michael Patterson, so do, and sometimes twice a week. You know, so do, and Chris, I have a great affection for Chris. He inspired me to get back into rallying when I had retired. I sort of took a period when I sort of got out of it, and he said to me, "No, Dessie, Jesus Christ, get back into it, man. You can't be doing that." You know, we spent a weekend on the Circuit of Ireland when it was an ERC championship, when Craig Breenan was doing it in the ERC, you know. So I spent a weekend with Chris, and he tortured me. He said, "You get your license," you know. So I did get it, you know, because I had retired for a couple of years. But yes, we got into it, and yeah, there was a bit of animosity. But the first year that we ran the notes, Stephen Murphy using our notes won the national championship, you know. So that was a big boost to us, you know. And people were dubious of, you know, the notes because there were, you know, there was an established thing there. Brian Patterson was established, and he was doing his thing. And we were promoting these numbered notes, but we were in Donegal. Donegal Motor Club said, "Right, you two guys, you're selling the notes there. You sit in the same room and sell them, and, you know, everything's fair and war, you know." So it was. So in the signing on in this room, we were both there doing our notes, and Austin Fraser was with Mervyn Johnson doing the historics, you know. And Austin came over to me and he says, "What's these notes like?" Here's me, you tell me, you know. He says, "Well, give me a set, I'll try them, you know." So he bought a set, and you know, after he left, there was a queue behind him.
Right. It just took somebody of his calibre to, yep.
Isn't it funny? It took somebody of his calibre, yeah. He just stepped above the power plate and walked over and said, "Look, what are these notes about?" And I explained to him in the simplest terms, and he said, "Give me a set of notes, we'll try them, you know." So we did. And as he was walking out the door, there was a queue behind him, you know. So I thought that was amazing. And I sold out of notes that particular week. I had to go back and print more, and, you know, so we did. But at the end of the day, we introduced something into Irish rallying, and then Brian Patterson did do numbers shortly after that. So we did. So everybody was getting what, you know, they were getting the full quota of whatever was available in paste notes, you know. So it did. But yeah, I suppose we were trailblazers in that way.
But it changed the landscape of, you know, of pace notes, because, like, if you watch some of the old in cars, the likes of Bertie or whatever, like, the co-driver, it was basically left and right, and, you know, there was no. It was a very basic form of navigation.
Yeah, but it was fast, medium K sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And so it was, and then we introduced then. The numbers worked well, you know, and in fact, I don't know if many people know this, but Brian Patterson's notes to this day, Patterson pace notes, have they have descriptive, they have numbers 1 to 6, and they have numbers 6 to 1, and they have another system. It's called the Finlay system. So it is. And Michael Patterson will tell you that. And the Finlay system has an extra note, 7 notes in it. So there is, you know. And of course, Stephen Finlay didn't devise that. I devised it for him, you know. Because he says to me, "I can't work with this. There's something missing here, you know." I says, "Okay, well, add another note into it, you know." So we will. So, and Michael was telling me recently there that some people are actually inquiring about the Finlay system. So there is. But if you ever look in the website of Patterson Pace Notes, there's the Finlay system there. So there is. So there you are. So my name's on a few things, you know.
And I suppose then the relationship with Finlay then finished up shortly after the circuit won.
Yeah, shortly after the circuit. I mean, I was with Stephen for 9 years, and I suppose Stephen stayed in rallying for those 9 years because I encouraged him all the time, and there was a couple of periods when it wasn't so good, you know. But as I said at the beginning of the Michelin pilot thing, there was a lot of pressure on, and there certainly was a lot of things that had to be done. When it came to the British Championship, Malcolm's operation looked after everything there. When it came to the Tarmac Championship, it was all left on my lap. So it was, you know. For the Circuit of Ireland, for instance, you know, we needed them out in the maps. So we did for the chase car, 2 chase cars and a management car, you know. And in the south of Ireland, 30 years ago, it was half-inch maps, you know. And Phil Mills was Malcolm's sidekick reading the maps that weekend, you know. They weren't doing a great job of it, you know, so they weren't. So, there was an awful lot of work that had to be done. And, you know, I said to Malcolm, I can't do all this work, you know. I just can't do everything, you know. So I can't. So we sent Phil Mills over to help me out in the circuit. And after the circuit, then it came to Killarney. So it did. And we had to get special dispensation from Mike Marshall to recce on a couple of days other than the recognised days, because Stephen's workload got so big. The Pirelli rally was coming up as well, and at that time the bills started to come in from Galway circuit and the Vauxhall Rally of Wales, you know. So there was a bit of pressure there, and it wasn't my problem. That was between Stephen and Malcolm, you know. So it was. So whatever agreement they came to, it included me being dropped, you know. Right. So that was quite devastating for me, you know. So it was. But listen, it happens in rallying, and it happens today, and it also happens, and you move on, you know. So you do. Shortly after Stephen, Ian Greer came to me. And Ian Greer had moved up that year, 94. He had moved up from being national champion to getting a works type Toyota and moving into the Tarmac Championship, and didn't work out for him. You know, it just the results weren't there, and you know, he came to me and he says, "I don't know what I'm doing wrong, you know, but it's not there." So I said, "Okay, well, listen. Let's look at your notes," and we looked at it, and we made a few changes, and I did a couple of rallies with him, and hopefully we changed some of the things that he was doing, and because Ian Greer was a great driver, you know, fabulous driver, you know. Oh, yeah. So it was. So him and Dean got their system sorted out and got what I believe was a better system, you know, and moved on to be phenomenal champion, you know. So we did, no doubt about it, you know.
Again, one of those very underrated drivers that probably, you know, the history books probably shows him in a kinder light than what he was nearly viewed at the time, because he was probably a wee bit like Stephen, didn't like to talk about it. He just wanted to get into the car and drive.
Yeah, he was a really, really talented driver. He certainly had the speed and all, you know. So he hadn't got the pace when he got into the Tarmac Championship, but he soon got the pace, you know, and he soon got up and he was comfortable with his notes, and he was comfortable with Dean, and you know, they got on really well, and in the end up he was fabulous driver, you know. Yeah. So he did, but you know, again, he ran into difficulties with Motorsport Ireland, you know. So he did. And there was a few court cases and things like that, and it was a bit like Eamon Boland, you know. I mean, Tarmac champions seemed to be frowned upon, you know. So it did. Mm-hmm. I found competing in Ireland with Stephen, people were very critical of us, you know.
Right.
We went to Wexford, and the organisers of Wexford said, "Well, you were down here cheating, and I says, "What I tell you, in them days getting to Wexford wasn't easy. There was no
No.
M50, there was no M50 or nothing,
Yeah.
or no M1 or nothing. I tell you, getting from Belfast to Dublin was a nightmare.
Aye, to get to Wexford was a day nearly on its own.
Just wait till I tell you, there's not a chance that we would never waste our time going down there to do that. We brought the Iran down to Wexford for the first time, and scrutineering was an absolute nightmare.
Right.
Okay, it was a brand new car, but they found so many faults with it. I think in the end up sitting, he says, "Look, I put the car in the trailer and go home." And then they backed off a bit. So it did, and I thought, we don't need this grief. So going to England and Wales and Scotland was a lot easier for us.
Because they
So
were delighted to see you.
delighted to see us, and it took the limelight off Stephen. So it did. People read about him in motor news, but that was it. So they did.
And I suppose this would become more relevant towards the end of the story. At this time as well, you were doing a wee bit of flirtation with historic rallying. You sat with Niall Crichton, and there was another guy in a Mini as well too in the early 90s as well too. Historic rallying was only in its infancy really then.
Yeah, when you talk about a guy in a Mini, he was a guy called Donald McBride.
Yes,
So he
couldn't
was.
think his name.
Donald McBride was a relation of Cal Curley's. He was a relation of the famous songwriter from Derry,
Phil Coulter.
Phil Coulter. They were all in that little bubble. And Donald McBride had a fabulous Healy 3000, which he done events in Europe with. So he did, and he was quite an eccentric man. He was a really, really nice guy, and his idea of rallying was he turned up in his Mercedes 350S, the trailer on behind and the Mini on behind, and we headed off to Galway, and we just had a blast. So we did, and then we would have champagne that evening, and your life was great, and so it was, and I think I done a tarmac championship year with him, so we did, and it was great crack, so it was, and it just happened out of the blue, so it did. The Niall Crichton, well, I knew Niall, and he asked me to do Donegal, and did Donegal, and again, he was in a circle of guys like Harry Brown and that who I associated with, and so it did, and Niall asked me to sit with William on an R2 test that he was doing when William was making his way up, and John Armstrong had a couple of R2 Fiestas, which at the time he was going really, really hard in. I seen a couple of in cars of them, frightening. So it was. So William had a go at one of these, and we did Bishop's Court, and Liam was already entered in that rally, so he was. So Niall says to me, "Would you sit in him to do the test?" And I was really sick that week. I was down with the flu, and I could have seen the rally far enough, but I wouldn't let anybody down. So I turned up. It was a bloody cold day, and William says, "There's a bicycle. Do you want to come doing the notes with me?" Here's me. Nah, you're all right. Go do it yourself. I'll just read them on the ground. So the test day didn't go that great, but I had the opportunity of sitting with him, and he's a great pilot, So he's fabulous talent, So
as we're recording this today, the announcement's out that he's doing the BRC and Yaris. This young guy, within 10 years, he's at the top of his game. Fantastic, isn't it?
Oh, I'd be putting a tenner on to win the BRC and a Yaris, So it would. And Michelin. Michelin's the key. Michelin tires are fabulous.
Sure.
Fabulous.
And then coming, they were both at this stage were the late 90s and all, and David Kidd, initially in the Sunbeam, but then into the 106. That was the time you're going over, you talked earlier about the junior BRC. The 106 was the cup car. This was the, Mark Fisher's, the Chris Meeks, all those guys all come up through the 106 cup, and those were. It was tenths of seconds, it was fractions of seconds, it was splitting you, and you were mixing it with the best of them.
Well, we went to the 106 championship, and we didn't know what to expect. And, there was, you mentioned a few names there, but you missed Rory Gallagher, Gary Jennings.
Yeah.
Them guys were all in that 106 Cup was ferocious, like absolutely ferocious. I remember one stage it looked like a ploughed field. It was like ridges, And I says, we were doing the recce, and I said, I don't know how you're going to drive over that, Chris Meek put his foot to the board and never lifted it, And if the car didn't make it to the end of that straight, well, that was tough. So it was. He wasn't going to be lifting. Yeah, that was, and it was. Anyway, we done the first round and we didn't do very well, and we're doing the second round and we broke a drive shaft. So we went and watched the rally, and we were standing at the side of the road, and these guys were just flat everywhere, revving the life out of these, And Davy Kidd says, Jesus, is that the way you do it? So it was. So the next round, we were the same, flat out. We had a couple of good results after that, Once we knew how to drive the car, But the pace was relentless, But it was a fabulous championship, and it was run well. Stella Bowles ran it, and she was great organizer, So she was, and that championship was run really well. But yeah, all the boy racers are out there, I'll tell you.
And, the thing that we talk that is missing in rallying so much now, manufacturer involvement. Stella Boyles was, and Desert, those were Peugeot Talbot UK. That was the link to the manufacturer. Yeah,
absolutely. And having those people around and being there on every event, that encourages young drivers, and it also opens doors. So it does. If you're a young driver going to a rally every weekend or once a month or whatever, unless you have those people to look up to and being involved with them and have an association with them through a championship like that, you don't get doors open to you, So you don't, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day, I mean, I'm long in the tooth for all that now, but I seen the day where I knew how to open doors. So you had to speak to the right people at the right time,
And another guy then that you helped to find his mojo again was Gabriel Snow. Again, probably Gabriel's one of those underrated drivers who done really well, but was only on the scene for a very short time.
Yeah, Gabriel Snow won Cork 20, which was an ITRC event. And in them days, and even now, not a lot of people win tarmac championship events. Even then and now, you can put them on your five fingers. So you can, they're special people. I believe they're special people. So they are. Rallying has changed now, of course, but at the same time, and Gabriel Snow was one of those people, and he came to me one time and he says, show me how to make notes. I says, you know how to make notes? I know, but something's not right, So I lived in Morenston for 35 years, and I had a little route that I used to, because people came to me regularly to make notes, learn how to make notes, whatever, So I'd take them out on this thing and I would show them, different ways of positioning the car and all that in order to make a good note, And Gabriel Snow knew all that, And I said to him, but you know all this, He says, I know, but take me to a tighter road. I says, look, tight roads don't make time. You don't make time on tight roads. So you don't. You keep safe on tight roads and you keep neat. If you want to put up stage times, you need to be going fast on fast bits of road. So you do. That's what it's all about, carrying speed. Keith Cronin's one of the best men I ever see at carrying speed. Phenomenal guy at it, So he is. So he said, okay, will you do a couple of rallies with me? So we did. He had bought James Leckie's 555, the Impreza. Fabulous car, And we went to Mayo, and I think he was about 6th overall, or 5th or 6th overall, or something like that, Wasn't a great result, but it was good for him, because he got finishing an event. His confidence went sky high, and I just thought it was a fabulous car, So it was. The car done everything you asked it to do. When you're thundering down a road at 100 miles an hour and you came to a hairpin left, when you braked and changed down, the car worked with you. You could feel it pulling you back, Fabulous car, And then we went on to win Circuit of Kerry, which was the next round. So it was, yeah, he was another driver who, great talent, So he was, no doubt.
That's for sure. And then, and named as probably part of Irish folklore history, Trevor Cathers, like what Trevor, like he was never probably, he'll never be regarded as a winner of the Tarmac Championship or whatever, but he was such a legend. British Group N champion, Tarmac champion, Group N, like the role of honour he has, and everybody you speak to, Trevor, TC, everybody calls him, was just an absolute gentleman, just loved his rallying, loved competing, loved being out doing events.
TC was fabulous. TC was multiple British champion, multiple Tarmac champion, and Trevor, TC as we all call him, as you know, he had a great brain, he remembered everything. Now, the format was TC was very simple. You went and done the recce, and you done the recce from the way the rally was going to be run. Start at the start, go around the loop, and go to the finish, and whatever way the rally's going to be run, that's the way he recce'd, And he could remember every junction. Sometimes you could sit there all day and not talk to him. He'd know to turn right 2 miles down the road, turn left 2 miles down the road. We would. A fabulous memory. It was just unreal, So it was the amount of things he remembered. But he was a fabulous driver, He rang me. Again, he'd done the Tarmac Championship and things weren't going that well. So they weren't, He had a couple of one bad accident thing. He had a couple of DNFs or something. Anyway, his championship wasn't going right, so he rang me and he said, "Would you sit with me in the Isle of Man?" And I said, "Yeah." So we went to the Isle of Man, and he had a great team around him. Robbie McGurk looked after the car, Philip Moynihan looked after the tyres, sponsored by Kuma, and there was literally 4 of us in the team, and nobody needed to tell anybody else what to do. Everybody knew what to do, so they did. Philip Moynihan, TC never asked Philip Moynihan what tyres to put on, so he never asked him. Philip would say, "I put them doots on," TC will go dead on, and it was a bit like that, and get in, and if there was a problem with the car, he would tell Robbie, and it would be sorted, and I done my job, and it was great because all you had to do was concentrate on your job, So you had, I'll sit and read the notes, and TC, he was a fabulous driver. Yeah. So he was. Like when the speed got up, I got my knees well tucked in, because Group N was all about going fast on the fast bit, Yeah. And when he opened her up, and I tell you were well down the road with the notes, because he was well down the road as well, So I remember in Cork, you got a puncture on the left front on my side, and I used to keep the window down a wee bit, So I did, and next minute the tire started disappearing, up the side of the car, and the wing mirror went, and I started to wind the wind up, because half the car was coming apart, TC never lifted. Never. On right-hand bends, yes, there was a wee lift. On left-hand bends, no, never lifted. So we didn't. We came off that stage, and if you seen the side of the car, half of it was non-existent, But he only dropped maybe about a minute, so he did, Yes. Oh, fabulous driver, And in Galway was the last round that year that he won the Group N with me sitting with him. Now, I didn't win it because I hadn't registered at the beginning of the year with him. That. Right, yeah. With loads of my championships were like that. Simon Chapman's was the same. So it was, Everybody came to me at the last minute,
Yes.
So they did. So came the last round in Galway, and it was wet, really wet. The roads were the roads were flooded really bad, and TC was up against it now, and times weren't that great. We couldn't really get into the swing of it, and it was looking pretty. We needed to win Group N to win the championship, so we did. And I'm trying to think of the guy who we're competing against, guy with the beard. He had a
White, Roy White.
Roy White, yeah, and Greg Sinners, and Roy was he was getting the best of us most of the day, so he was. And then we came into, it got dark, and because it was November time, I think, it was dark, and we came on to a stage which was loose chippings, them loose chippings that they put down. Oh God, I hate them, and it was about 10-mile stage, very fast stage, and TC just, I never seen a car going down a road as quick in my life, So then, in the dark, he never left it for nothing, And we came off the stage 30 seconds ahead of Roy White, and Roy White couldn't believe it, and he said, he says to Greg, something wrong with that time. There's he's got a jump there, So he has, But it was checked and double checked. But I knew he had the time, So he had, and not decided the whole lot in the end, So he was a great driver. I had loads of admiration for the guy, And then unfortunately, the next year, his son built him an Evo 9 as part of his thesis, because he was doing a motorsport engineering degree, So he was Alistair, who was a great mechanic, So he was, and TC, we took it out on an event. I think it was an ALMC event. So we did. It was an Evo 9. It was a phenomenal car, phenomenal car. And then TC went on holiday. We did Galway. He didn't do that well. The Gary Jenningses and all were, they were the hot shots that were starting to come up, So they were, and then TC went on holidays to Tenerife, I think it was, and broke his arm, broke it badly, and he never rallied after that. So it took a long time to heal it, and he never came back,
Yeah.
So we didn't. But that's the story of my life,
And I suppose before we move on, there was another man in that kind of sort of area and all too, WJ Dolan as well too. You had a rally with WJ, and one of the real characters of Irish rallying, wasn't he, in his day?
Oh, he was a character, He was. I love spending time with Billy John. He was a mine of information. So he was, and he had a great brain. So he had, but Billy John sponsored TC, so he did. In those tarmac championship years, and then it was a natural progression for Willie John to get me, So we did. So we done a couple of circuits. We done a few rallies, and we had great fun. He was great cracking. We did the zero car in Rally Ireland. We were the car in front of Loeb. Jesus, that was pressure, And in Rally Ireland, the organisers insisted on us reporting into every junction to make sure everything was clear. And Willie John insisted on me reading notes because we done a full recce for it, So we did. The weather was horrendous, and I'm reading notes and then trying to go into the control every time to get on the. God, it was horrendous, So it was. But Willie John was fun. He really was. Good crack,
And you still had that team there too. You had Robbie McGurk and Phil Moynihan as well too. That whole team was still around you as well.
Well, Phil Moynihan and me go back a long time, back to the Ears of England.
Yes.
When the Ears were starting up in Ireland, but Mike Pattison and Steve King had a team in England, and that's when I got involved with that, and that's when I met Philip for the first time, So it was, and we stuck up a great relationship, and it's stuck with us since then, So it has. But yeah.
Okay. And Connor, you want to jump in there again?
Yeah, I suppose after that you worked with Mike Kern and John Walker, both who kind of came to the sports from other motorsport disciplines. Like, how was that getting them adapted to pace notes and listening to a co-driver?
Well, Michael's father, Dickie, who recently passed away, a great man, great guy. Dickie done the tarmac championship with TC and me the year that we done in 2002, and so he and Michael was in the background, so he was. So Michael had a good knowledge. Michael's a great driver, fabulous driver, but Michael got onto the notes very, very quickly, and as the rounds got on, Michael had a fabulous system, but Michael sat at home with two big TVs on the wall, and he had Dickie's pace notes of stage one on one side and his pace notes of stage one on the other side, and he sat night after night looking at all these to see where Dickie was taking the time off him, because Dickie was his benchmark. So he did, and something, by Donegal he was beating Dickie. He could see where Dickie was carrying the speed, and he could see how the notes worked for him and didn't work for Michael, and no, Michael was very thorough at his job, so he did, and that's how he learned. He learned by the in-car was the most important thing, and every stage was analysed Dickie's way and his way, and that's how he developed. And as I say, about halfway through the year, Michael was beating Dickie, so he was, great driver. He had great speed, so he had very neat driver. That came from the karting days, so it did, and yeah, he was good, no doubt about it. He was good.
And then John Walker, ex-biker.
Yeah, John Walker, an ex-biker. Just finished with Michael Kern. I had moved to Portugal the year that I sat with Michael, so it was very difficult, So when the championship was over, really, there was no point in Michael staying with me, because I had moved to Portugal by then, and I was in Portugal and was there for a few years after that, So it was. But then when I came back from Portugal, I got a phone call from John Walker, who was a motorbike guy. He was very. He had. I think he'd won some motorbike championships and things like that, and he'd done a lot of trials and things like that. But he was good motorbike man. Anyway, he wanted to do rallying, so he rang me, and he said, would you sit with me? And I said, well, I'll tell you the story the same as I tell everybody else. I'll sit with you for one event. If it works out and we get on all right, sure, we'll carry on, So what? No big contract signed, blah, 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 So that was okay. We went, and he bought a Subaru, Group N Subaru, and we went and done, I think it was Mid-Antrim or Maharafelt rally was first on the loose, And I'm not exaggerating, Connor. It was the worst stage of my life. John Walker, being a motorbike man, didn't know how to listen to anybody. He didn't even know what a pace note was, although I had given plenty of tuition on it, See, when he got into the car and the red mist was up and, the hype was going and everything was going, he hadn't a clue what I was saying. I might as well be mumbling to him, So it was, and the first stage was horrendous. I says to him, oh, Jesus, this is awful, So it was. But, I think we'd done 3 Northern Ireland Championships. And on the last one, I think he lost the championship by a point. So he did. So, he did. He wasn't long catching on. And he was prepared to spend the money and improve the car and get a better car. And he got a car built and all. And we got the notes perfected. And, he found it just too expensive, So we went back to the motorbikes. Believe it or not, he's still riding motorbikes. So he is in championships, So he is. But that's the way rallying is, You win some, you lose some, So you do.
And then you took a bit of a break for a while from the sport.
Yeah, as I said, I retired. I think I was about 60 or something. And I said, people kept saying to me, when do you see the red light coming on, And I'm thinking, well, what's this red light thing, I thought, Jesus, I must have missed it because, I haven't seen no red light, So I haven't. But I thought, well, maybe I missed the red lights. So I thought 60. Maybe it's too late. I'm too old to be doing it. So I retired, and then I got, as I say, I spent this weekend with Chris Patterson. He devoured me. He says, "What, retire? Not a chance. Get back in there." So I did get my license back, and I'm sorely glad I did, because what I discovered, that everybody that I know is in motorsport. So by not being there, I was a bit of a recluse. So it was. And then when I did do a rally after coming back, I sat with Marty Taggart on the Down rally, and I went into signing on, and I thought, oh Jesus, I'll not recognise nobody here. They'll all be young talent and all. It was all the old faces, so it was. So it was. So I thought, well, I haven't missed much, so I haven't. Yeah. So that was that. But no, I'm glad I did come back, because it was, times at the moment are fabulous, So
Yeah, because that's something that we often say about rallying. Like, there's such good people about it. Right throughout, from officials, marshals, competitors. It is like a big family that you go to the Down rally, you'll see certain heads that you'll bump into and have a chat with. You go to, I don't know, Cork, and there'll be a lot of them same people there too. It's almost like a travelling trip.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And officials and marshalling and all that. I do quite a lot of official and marshalling, so to help out if I'm not actually doing an event, because I know them, because I've been there, I did organise rally. I know what it's like to try and get a team together to marshal an event and that, and those people are the salt of the earth. Without them, we would never rally.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, And they should earn the respect that is due to them, so they could.
For sure.
But yeah, it's. I was. I'm trying to think, but I lost my train of thought there. So I did.
But I suppose, like, one of the events that you were a big part of was Lurgan Park. Like, it was
Remember the showpiece?
The showpiece, yeah, the showpiece of Irish rallying for so many years. We think of Michael Sundstrom coming over, Tony Pond coming over. It was this was the prime time. This was it was such an epic event that you had TV presenters, radio presenters, queuing up to get sitting in with these rally cars.
And it was bringing rallying to the people as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was a great idea. I mean, the last rally, the Burma rally that Bertie and me won in '77 was the last rally that Northern Ireland ran in the forests. And the Burma rally then in '78 became the Lurgan rally. It was still the Burma rally in '78, but it quickly shifted over to being the Lurgan Park rally. So it did, And something, there was phenomenal potential for that rally,
Yeah.
That rally, I seen, and I tried to convey it to the committee, I seen that as developing into a festival of speed.
Yeah.
That's the way I seen it.
Yeah.
And to this day, don't know why it didn't develop into something like that, or even into a 2-day event. Should the second day have been to do with some other type of motorsport,
Even a car show or something, yeah, it could have been developed in such a way. Yeah.
It had massive potential.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that came to it was phenomenal. I mean, I was a safety officer on it for a few years, and the crowds was phenomenal, but I was a safety officer the day that Linda Jane went into the lake, As you say, we had these personalities that came, and there was loads of them, and there was real buzz around it. And what we had to do was find a driver who was safe, And I seen Sean Campbell as the safest man on earth. So I did, he was very articulate. He was a great driver. I can't remember him having an accident. Here's me, he's the man. Put Linda Jane in with him. So he did. Didn't he touch a tree stump and toppled the Ascona into the lake upside down? Oh God! I thought I was going to have a coronary that day. So it did, you know. It was horrendous, you know. So it was. But I can tell you, after that, we had some safety plan. So we had, it was unreal. So it was, you know. But it was just one of them things, you know. It was very, very difficult, you know. So it was. But yeah,
And
but the,
as you say, it was such a shame to see the way that they kind of just almost kind of faded away.
yeah, it was sad, really, you know. So it was. It's very difficult. I mean, I'm passionate about North Armagh Motor Club, you know, because I served in the council of it, you know. So we did organised rallies and was there for a long time, you know, and I still help them out today whenever they need help, you know. But I don't get involved in the day to day workings of it. That's up to them, you know. But there's a lot of shortcomings in it, and I feel very sorry for the club, you know, because now this year we don't have Kirkuson, you know, so we don't.
Right.
We have one rally, which is Lochgall, and you know, is that going to be it? You know, so it is. It's
Aye,
very
a few years ago, you had Kirkuson, you had Lochgall, you had Lurgan Park, and like
yeah, and
probably three
we had
three of the
Tarka
best
rally.
events, and Targa rallies as well.
Yeah,
But probably three of the best rallies in Northern Ireland Championship, or not even rounds of championship at that time. Three independent rallies, like
North Armagh had the best facilities
yeah,
in the country. They had the use of Lochgall. Not everybody gets that opportunity.
yeah,
They don't. They had Lurgan Park. Not everybody gets that opportunity. And the council of Lurgan Park, the council of Craigavon at the time, very supportive of them, and you know, whatever they wanted, they got, you know. So they did, and there was changes made to Lurgan Park to suit the rally, you know. So that wouldn't happen in England or anywhere like that. So it wouldn't, you know. And it's just a shame the way things went. But listen, it wasn't my call, so it wasn't, you know. I at this stage I was concentrating on rallying because Finlay took up a lot of my time, and then after that, I sort of was rallying more or less all the time. I didn't do any organising at all, you know. So I didn't.
and then coming up closer to up to date, you still this still getting in with young guys coming up through the ranks. JT Warnock and Dean McDowell, and then even Scott Singleton. You must still get the same buzz out of rallying as you always ever did, because like it's not everybody's going to jump in with a young guy learning his trade. You still want to be in there with them young guys, helping them out, pointing them in the right direction.
Well, those situations came about when I sat with Marty Taggart. His son was Dean McDowell, so he was. So it was a natural progression for Marty to come and say to me, "Would you keep an eye on Dean?" So he could. So that's how that started. But Dean, the fabulous driver, great wee driver. So he is, brilliant. So he is, and I hope he gets his breaks. So he does. And the Scott Singleton one was quite simple. Willie is in North Armagh Motor Club as well, and Willie came to me and said, "Look, Scott's starting out on the road. Would you keep an eye on him?" I was always to keep an eye on him, So I don't know what that meant, and we done a couple of rallies, and Scott's great driver, safe driver, sensible guy, thinks things through, methodical and all, So he is, and unfortunately, about 2 years ago, Kevin, I took a TIA. So I did. Too much. I was working too hard, and I was doing too much driving. I was away from home too much, and I just not as young as I used to be, So I needed to wise up, So I took this TIA. It was diagnosed with me anyway, and I sat Scott and Willie down, and I said, "Look, guys, I might have to step back. So I might, I'll still do a bit of historic rallying because I didn't want to close the door altogether. Still do a bit of historic rallying. Here's me for some silly reason thinking that historic rallying was not as quick as as sitting in Mark II Escort, So it did. And so I said to Scott, and it probably was a good decision to make then, because it allowed him then to find a young guy to work with over the next couple of years, you know, and then I could stick to doing what I thought was only a couple of historic rallies, but actually we've done quite a few, you know. So we have. So in some ways it was regretted, but at the time that it happened, I think it was the best decision to make, was to step back a bit, you know, from Scott anyway, you know. Because yes, he'd have been going hard, so he would, same boy, you know.
Yeah, another great talent now coming up through the system. And you said now you found your feet now back again at historic rallying, and a name that was mentioned way back in the early days, Harold Bunton.
Yeah, Harold Bunton, yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, you know, we get on quite well, you know, so we do, and we've had some great experiences, and we've done some great rallies, you know. I mean, I have had my eyes opened last year, Kevin, as to rallying in Europe and rallying in Ireland, you know. An historic rally in Europe, we went to Costa Brava rally. There was 262 entries for historics. You know, think about that, you know. Now, it was made up of about 50 FIA drivers, which we were. Then it was made up of about another 100 national drivers, guys in Mark II escorts, and they were in all sorts of things, you know. And then they had regularity competitors. There was about another 40 or 50 of them, you know, guys who they'd done the route, but they'd done it on a different system. You know, there was 3 different sets of organisers organising 3 different rallies, all in the one rally. So there was, you know, and I thought that was amazing. I thought, what a way to bring the numbers up, you know. And when we went to San Marino, they had the same thing, but they also had like a déjà vu type rally tagged onto the back of all that. So if you had, as you know, and I know, and everybody knows, that there's little rally cars and little sheds all over the country that guys polish up and take out for maybe the déjà vu, or maybe to take to the church fete on a Saturday or something in the summer, to show them off and all. Well, there was actually a rally for guys like that who could turn up. They had a number on the side of the car that said San Marino Historic Rally. Well, that made their day.
Jeez,
you know,
this was
gloves on, didn't have helmets on, and they drove to the stage, and they just, you know, and to them that was a rally, you know, and they could go home and say, well, I done San Marino Historic Rally. So they didn't have to break the car. They weren't asked to break the car.
No,
so
it was just a leisurely drive round, yeah.
They drove through the stages, you know, and I thought, you know, there must be a system here that we can do that. So, you know, phenomenal, you know.
And like, you know, at what, you know, 70 odd years of age now, like, to go away now.
Bit more than that.
I was being kind.
I know you were, yeah, I know you were, you know.
But like, at 70 odd years of age, going away and these new adventures, like, this is the great, again, we go back to the thing I was saying earlier about rallying. There's no, you know, it doesn't matter how young, how old you are, there's always some new adventure to be had.
Well, Kevin, we'll come back to the red light. So, where I lost my train of thought.
Yes.
Red light, I know now what a red light means. So do. And the red light is not sitting in the car thinking, I've lost my nerve here. A red light is when you reach the age where somebody rings you up and says, do you want to do a rally? And you go, no, I don't know, you know. That's the red light.
Yeah.
So it is, you know. If you can still say, yes, I'd love to do the rally, your red light hasn't come on. So it doesn't, you know. So it does.
Just before we wrap it up, Dessie, like if you were to pick a highlight from looking back at everything, you know, what would be the standout for you?
I think the standout has to be winning the Circuit of Ireland. It's something I've always wanted, something I have dreamed about, and my stepdaughter laughs at me. You know, she says, you know, she watches the video of me talking to Plum, you know, and saying, you know, this is the highlight of my career, blah, blah, blah. And this is the highlight of your career, you know. I say, the little shite, you know. But yeah, I have to say, I think that was it, really, you know. So it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's such a thrill to get to things like the Costa Brava, to San Marino, iconic rallies like that, you know, and you know that gives me a real buzz. So it does, you know. But you know, I'll be remembered for somebody who won the Circuit of Ireland, and if not, somebody will tell somebody that I'm the guy that won the Circuit of Ireland. You know, so that's good enough for me. You know, at the end of the day, I was never a superstar, so I wasn't. You know, but listen, I sat with some iconic guys. I'm proud of that. So I am, and I'm still here. That's even better. So,
You sat in some iconic cars as well over the years too. Like when one of the cars that's always going to be remembered, the Michelin Pilot Escort. You know, that is going to be one of those cars.
I know, and one of the good things that came out of that silly PR company, you know, is that they arrived in Ireland with hundreds of thousands of these Michelin car stickers, and there must be one in every garage in Ireland. So there must,
Yes.
you know, and if they're not, somebody will pull one out and say,
they'll not be far away from
you
one.
know. You know,
and you've seen the development of cars right from like basically the very very basic car now to like these ultimate machines now, and like to see the way the sport has developed, but still at the hub of it is the people.
Well, you know, I believe, and I still tell people this, that I am so privileged to have lived through an era of rallying, which was the best era ever. It'll never be like that again. You know, through the Group B, through the Group A, you know, through the Manta years, you know, even way back in the 70s, the Avengers and Sunbeams, you know, and all that. And right up to the cars today, you know, the guys competing today, the seconds separating them because basically all the cars are the same.
Yeah.
So they are, you know. I mean, you're talking about Mickey Joe being the world champion, you know. I think they call it the World Festival Champion or something, you know. It's for over 55s. And the year before last, I brought a car out to Italy to a guy, and I was in his workshop, and he introduced himself as Moramilia, you know. I says, "Who are you?" You know. He says, "I'm the world champion." You know. I says, "Are you?" He was the World Festival Champion.
Yes.
He was the one before Mickey Joe, so he was, and I was picking up his Polo R5, which he had rallied that particular year in the World Championship, and he had just received the brand new Skoda from TalkSport, you know.
Yes.
So it was, and he says to me, you know, there's no difference in them two cars. So there's not. It's the same floor plan. It's basically the same car, but there's a lot of work done to the Skoda that makes it that little bit better, you know. So it's an amazing world, isn't it? You know.
And that's something we never even touched on was, you know, you for the latter part of your career, you set up a shuttle business, basically transporting cars across Europe, and you must have met some great characters over them years as well.
Oh, it's unreal, you know. I mean, some of the cars that guys have, and the collection and all that they have, you know. I mean, I done work for the Bertie family who own Mondellas, you know. And they have an iconic classic cars there. So they have racing cars and all, you know. But in England, they own Lola. And they have a collection of Golf Lolas. Every Golf Lola that won a race from the 50s right through, they have it in this fabulous collection, you know. And to see that was a privilege, you know. So it was. And I done some work for them and brought some stuff to the Festival of Speed. And I was bringing a Subaru S12 or something over to Belgium for a guy. And I think he said his name was Hansen or something, you know. Anyway, that was the contact I had. So this guy, I contacted the guy and I says, "Are you?" "Yeah, I'm Hanson, blah, blah, blah." I says, "Well, I'll be there tomorrow sometime." "Right, okay, blah, blah, blah." So anyway, I arrived, cut a long story short, arrived in his workshops at 6 o'clock one morning in the winter, and I was unloading the car, and this guy drove up in a C3, and I said to him, "Are you Hanson," or whatever the name was? And he says, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I says, "Jesus, you look like Yves Maton to me." Yves Maton was the manager of Citroën for years.
Yeah.
Managed Loeb and Meek and all them, and then he was an FIA delegate, I says, "Jesus, you look like Yves Maton to me, He says, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And away he went into his office, Here's me. Is that him or not, So I dropped everything and walked into the office. I says, "You are Yves Maton, aren't you?" He says, "Yeah, I am, yeah." I says, "Oh, well, I'm Dessie Wilson." Like, and I,
I wouldn't disagree.
I went to Ireland, blah, blah. And I went around the British Championship. Oh, he says, "Come on," and so he brought me to shows. He showed me his collection of cars, rally cars, historic rally cars. And it was absolutely amazing, And he says, "Dean, come on, you and me take a photograph with Francois Delacour's Monte Carlo winning Cosy,
Yeah.
There's me. Gosh, great to have a name, isn't it? And I've done a lot of business with him since that. He owns a company called My Motorsport, which, if you look at My Motorsport, the French and the Continentals, they spell their name the wrong way around. So MY is YM, Yves Maton,
yes.
is My Motorsport. Yes. Here's me, God, there's click now.
But it must be such a privilege, to get to see these collections, because a lot of these are behind closed doors. They'll never be seen.
Never be seen.
And to have people that trust you enough to come and show them, and not only that, but to transport their cars across, countries.
Yeah, I mean, they're hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of cars, It's amazing. The stuff that goes to the Festival of Speed is, you couldn't put a price on some of them,
Oh, it's priceless, isn't it? Yeah.
Priceless, So it is, and such a privilege. I found it a privilege, So it did, and I never for the world of me thought, I was sitting with nothing to do and bored, and I thought, wonder if I bought one of them trailers would do any business, And my stepdaughter says to me, "Well, you need to be on Facebook if you're going to do that." Here's me, "No, I don't like Facebook. We'll not be having that." She says, "No, you need to be on Facebook." I says, "All right, well, you set up a thing on Facebook, whatever you do, And it just exploded. So it did. But I think a lot of it was because people knew me and people trusted me. And at the end of the day, it was all about trust.
Trust.
I think that is the key word, really.
Yeah. So, Dessie, I think we're going to wrap it up at that now. So, trust and keep that red light from coming on.
Thank you very much, Kevin and Connor. Thank you. Now,
Dessie, many thanks once again. Really, really enjoyed that, Connor. It was some fun.
Oh, look, just fantastic. And a couple of hours that flew in, genuinely, really didn't notice the time passing. Could have stayed another hour or two listening to Dessie, chat.
That's for sure. He just has a great way of telling stories. So that is the 2025 season, episode 5. As always, please like, share, rate, subscribe. All those things make a huge difference. Keep doing what you're doing. And until the next time, take care, speak soon, and bye.
That's the proudest day and the proudest time and the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes, I got the bit between my teeth. I really stood up and was counted and said, "This is not getting away." I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, "What are we doing?" I said, "We're going for gold, Barrett." That's all was said. I can still picture that run. That was just the best run ever.